Back to the NFL, back to the king of all sports here in America. All team sports here in America, that is. So we had 3 rule changes that have been passed, it appears. All 3 came in. The news came in for all 3 this morning, and I've reacted to all 3. So the first one that broke, this was this morning around 11 o'clock Eastern time today, that the idea of this rule had been flirted with for some time. It has now been officially passed. According to Ian Rappaport, the NFL has banned the hip drop tackle. It's banned the hip drop tackle. So notable players such as Tony Pollard for the Cowboys, now with the Titans, and Mark Andrews with the Ravens have been injured on this type of play. So basically, you pull a guy down from his legs or from his hip, and he gets his leg gets trapped into under the player tackling him and gets injured pretty seriously. Again, Mark Andrews got injured on a Thursday night game last year against the Bengals on this exact type of play, missed the rest of the season. And by the way, the punishment for if you do commit this, 15-yard penalty and an automatic first down will be enforced should a player use the hip drop tackle technique. Again, this is according to Dov Kleiman. So again, basically it's a personal foul. Personal foul, hip drop tackle, 15 yards, automatic first down is what we'll be hearing next season. This is going to be a really, really difficult rule to coach, to execute as a player, and to officiate as a referee. Like, I think we will see it a lot. Again, kind of like what we saw with the roughing the pass rule that they instituted in 2018 that was really controversial at the time, where a lot of these guys, I remember Clay Matthews got penalized for it in a big game against Minnesota in week 2 in 2018. I remember that. And he was like, man, what do you want me to do? How do you want me to sack the quarterback? I'm grabbing him. He's got the ball in his hand still. I'm sacking the quarterback. And the rule was, and still is, you can't drive your body weight into the guy. Tony Romo got injured on a play like that. Aaron Rodgers got injured on a play like that. A lot of quarterbacks have. And I'm all in favor of that rule. Now, have they gone too far at times to over-enforce it? Yes. And by the way, the NFL sort of addressed that in another rule that I'm going to bring up. But that rule, a lot of NFL referees, kind of experimented with it in the preseason. And then weeks 1 and 2 is very controversial. Oh my God, it's the worst rule ever. Oh no, it's going to ruin football as we know it. And we look today, it's probably a pretty good rule. By the way, Aaron Donald, recently retired Aaron Donald, you know what he did? He said, okay, you know what? I'm the biggest and strongest athlete in the field. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to drive my body. I'm not even going to bring the quarterback to the ground. I'm just going to grab him. I'm just going to throw him. I mean, you'd be surprised. Go back and look at Aaron Donald's tape and just see how many good quarterbacks he's like, I'm just going to throw him on the ground. Can't say I roughed him because I didn't land on the guy. The hip drop tackle's tough because in one sense, it's not safe at all for the ball carrier. And then the other side of the coin is, what do you want me to do? Now, again, the smart coaches, the smart defensive guys are going to be able to look at film, develop new technique and say, okay, this is how we're going to be able to coach these guys to do. Again, the good defensive coaches, the Mike Tomlins of the world, the D'Amico Ryans of the world, Sean McDermott, I would assume, guys like that, I think they'll figure it out. Draw Mayo with the Patriots. I think they'll figure it out. Here's my thing. And I'm going to go back to a quote by my buddy, my close friend, and teammate here at the Grid Network, the host of Clutch Sports Talk, Ryan Flowers. Shout out to Ryan today. It's my guy. He has a great line, and I love it. I love using any chance I get. He says, making football safe, tackle football safe, is like trying to make a cigarette healthy. You can make it less unhealthy. You can make football less unsafe. But in order to make a cigarette healthy, probably just get rid of the cigarette, And in the case of the NFL, the only other solution is flag football. And I don't think anybody's co-signing that yet, at least. So I really, again, to me, I will not have a fully formed opinion on this play, on this rule until about 3 weeks into the season, because I really, really do understand both sides of the argument. Like this is, listen, if you want to take one side, be my guest. Maybe listen, I'm a political independent. Okay. I tend to be a physically conservative guy and a socially liberal guy. So I see both sides of arguments in many respects. So this is kind of where I feel like, right, is where if I'm a defensive player, man, what do you want me to do? How am I supposed to tackle the guy? Am I supposed to just let him run another 10 yards, then get him at the correct angle? Like, what do you want me to do? In the case of the offensive guy, it's, man, I'm trapped. I can't get out. My leg's going to snap or my ankle or something. I'll have a fully formed opinion on this by week 3 of next year. How about that? I'll hold myself to it. You can hold me to it as well. The other 2 rule changes, I love. I'm totally in favor of both of them. And the first one I've been advocating for in all sports for years. So this is the second rule that came in. This broke about 10 minutes after the hip drop tackle one did. The NFL, this according to Dolph Kleiman on Twitter, the NFL has approved giving a team a 3rd challenge if they get one of their first 2 correct. I love this rule. Love it. So this is rewarding. Yes, you could say, well, aren't you already rewarding the coach for the challenge? If he's challenging if the receiver caught the ball or got 2 feet in bounds or something, and they look back and say, oh yeah, coach is right, we're going to reverse the play. Yes. Again, my preference would have been every coach gets 1 challenge, so it's a lot more near and dear to their heart. It means a lot more. Like, man, if I use this challenge, all right, you had challenges. If you disagree with the play call, it's out of your hands. You got to rely on the folks upstairs in the booth or in New York to go change the play because you can't. That in a perfect world, I would have liked that, but still, getting 2 and being rewarded if you get one right, it gives you so much more flexibility to be able to say, and more leverage, by the way, that say you get your first challenge wrong. And again, the likelihood of using 3 challenges of the game is probably pretty slim, but if the game went long, if it was like this year's Super Bowl, went deep in overtime, if it was a playoff game or something, which I think overtime reviews come from the booth, but nonetheless, if it was a long game, drag-out game, a lot of plays, and you challenge the play 3 times in a row. If you got 1 right, heck, if you got 2 right, or if you got the most recent challenge correct, man, don't you have a little bit of leverage if it's a little tight to say, I got the last one right. I was correct on this most recent one, maybe on the most 2 recent ones. So I love that rule. And I really like this rule too as well, because there's been a lot of complaints, rightfully so, about the roughing the passer rule. I think most people have come around the fact that, yeah, it's probably good to not have somebody, a 310-pound defensive tackle throwing his entire body weight into Patrick Mahomes and forget the Chiefs season, kind of screw up the NFL season. Because the last thing we need is, because Burrow got hurt last year. We don't need Burrow, Mahomes, Allen, Lamar. We don't need these guys going down. CJ Stroud. We need these dudes healthy on the field, ready to go. I remember 2017, a ton of quarterbacks got hurt. It was one of the lowest rated seasons in recent memory. Okay. This is from Tom Pelissero. The replay assistant will now be allowed to correct certain types of incorrect calls on the field for roughing the passer and intentional grounding. Now, I thought they already did with intentional grounding. Like, if they don't call it initially and then you see the officials come together and say, you know what, that was intentional grounding or that wasn't intentional grounding, we can reverse it. Or I guess you couldn't reverse an intentional grounding if it's already been called, but this rule gives them the freedom to do that. But the roughing the passer, like if a guy under the letter of the law legally, so to speak, sacks the quarterback or didn't rough the guy at all, say after he released it, you can go to the official say, that's a bad call. And the official can come together. Now, will they? I don't know. Because 5 years ago, if you remember, when the Saints, remember the horrible missed pass interference call, the Saints were like, oh, you robbed us of the Super Bowl, all that. To which I'd say you should have run the ball before that. Bled some more clock. Point is, the Saints were, outraged, the city of New Orleans. And so they got a rule change where you could challenge pass interference. And it barely got overturned. The interference barely got overturned. In part because A, it can be at times a bit subjective. And B, I think the refs, and I don't blame them for this necessarily, I could see the officials union kind of coming together and be like, you know what? The Saints, New Orleans, NFL fans at large, they're not going to win this. Doggone it, when we make the call, that is what the call is. Maybe pride took over. Ego took over. The rule really didn't affect that many games, if any games at all, in 2019, and they got rid of the rule after 1 year. So, again, will they discuss Intentional grounding, I think they will, because that's pretty clear cut if it's intentional grounding or not. Roughing the passer, it can be subjective, but on the obvious ones, I remember Chris Jones, Derek Carr play from a couple years ago on a Monday night game where Chris Jones not only sacked Derek Carr legally, but like literally took the ball out of his hands, and they called basically a fumble recovery by Chris Jones, and they called roughing the passer on him. So as far as these rules in totality, I'm really divided about the hip drop rule because I get the offensive players argument and the defensive players argument. Like I said, I'll have a first few weeks of the regular season, late September. I think I'll have a fully formed opinion on it because I got to see how it plays out, how it's officiated, and things of that nature. As far as the other two, I love that you get an extra challenge if you get at least one correct. I've been advocating for that in sports for years. In a perfect world, I'd want it to be one challenge so that holds much more weight, and you're rewarded all the more if you get another challenge. Because again, I don't think you're going to challenge 3 plays in a game. That said, I like the rule change. And then the last one, get to correct bad roughing the passer calls, which has been a topic of controversy and discussion amongst, forget NFL defensive players, among fans. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.